What's up, faithful? You're listening to another episode of the 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast, a part of the Odyssey Network. I'm Brian, he's Al, and listen, the 49ers came out of this bye, and like Idris Elba, the great character actor from England, and one of his most iconic characters from The Wire, Stringer Bell, said, the 49ers wanted the league to know, hey, put the message out there. We're back. And they were back in a big way on Sunday. Absolutely. Just, I don't even, dominating is not even the right word, just obliterating the formerly 6-2 on a 5-game winning streak Jacksonville Jaguars, 34-3. There's a lot of positives to take away from this game, very few negatives. Al, how was your Sunday sitting at that bar, drinking and enjoying some pretty impressive football?
I mean, I'm paying for it today a little bit, but it was definitely worth it. It was one of those days where you're like, yeah, I'm only gonna have 2 or 3, and then you look up at halftime and it's already gone to hell. But it was fun to do, man. Like I said, I needed a day like that. So, but listen, if you watch the 49ers play the Cowboys and then you went into a coma for a month and you woke up, you would say, oh, well, this just looks like the 49ers. But I hope everyone listening to this show did not have that happen to them. So they saw the struggles for the last 3-4 weeks, well, three games. And what was this team going to come out like? In the boxes I wanted to see checked, was Brock Purdy going to play a complete game? Was the defense going to look like the defense? And were the Avengers, essentially what it is, was it Avengers Assemble? And the 49ers would look like the 49ers again. And that's the thing I keep saying. And I saw Matt Miyoko actually said this too. He said, well, the defense looked like the defense. He said, I know that's not the best way to put it, but to me, that's the best way I can put it too. The 49ers looked like the 49ers. Mm-hmm. There's your analysis. It just looked like the team that they thought they would be. The defense looked like the defense and the defensive line we thought it would be. Brock Purdy was, I mean, I have so many stats on what he did that I'll give later. Thought he played a phenomenal game, absolutely phenomenal. And it was a response game for him. And he had everybody back. You had Debo, you had Trent, you had a defense now that was hopefully rested. You hope Dre Greenlaw still doesn't look like Dre Greenlaw to me, but I would hope he's getting a little bit more on the mend. You had Chase Young in the fold. So were they going to look like, again, the Avengers, just this team of stars, which is what they are. Yeah. They're a team of stars that's going to come in, and when they have all of their stars, they're probably going to kick your ass. And that's what we saw, and that's what it was. And it was for all the worries we've been doing the past 3 weeks or so, this was good to see because it put a lot of things to rest, at least for now.
Yeah. And, it goes to show what Trent Williams means to this team, what Debo Samuel means to this team, specifically the offense. And, I think not only did they make changes on the defensive line with the addition of Chase Young, not only did they make changes on defense where Steve Wilkes was now down on the sideline, which seemed to do well. The players seem to appreciate him being down there. You saw a couple times, he was, celebrating in his own subdued manner.
He just needed some hugs.
He's not gonna
hugs. That's all it was.
He's not gonna be Saleh. He's not gonna be Ryan's, but he did Hargrave's sack celebration when Hargrave came off the field after his sack. He was very much given Abra Thomas hugs and daps when he made his strip tackle. It's just like we said, we had questions going into this game. Were they going to answer them? And they answered them in the best way possible. Mm-hmm. And that was an absolute thorough domination of a team that was vying for the number 1 seed in the AFC at 6-2 when they played. So it was a fun game to watch. It was a great game to really establish what this second half is going to look like as long as this team remains healthy. In fact, Colin Cowherd said today on his show that a healthy 49ers team is by far and away the best team in the NFL, and it's not even close. And based on what this team has looked like when they were healthy, which is the first 5 weeks and then week 10, it's hard to argue that that's not the case.
And I guess I have to start with the defensive line because this team is built around the defensive line, right? They put a lot of resources into it. They put a lot of money into it. Hargrave makes 20 plus million. Eric Armstead makes a ton of money. Nick Bosa is the highest paid player in the league, and you bring in Chase Young as an addition. The defensive line makes a ton of money. They needed to step up. They needed to kind of show who they were, and they did from the word go. Javon Hargrave was a problem in this game.
Oh, he was a
from
monster.
The first snap, just pushing people back into the pocket. He looked like the guy that the 49ers expected he would be when they gave him all that money. Dominating the stuff he did with Philly last year, and I guess earlier in the year with the Niners too.
Yeah,
absolutely dominant from the inside. And then you have Nick Bosa, who, again, going back to what we said earlier, Nick Bosa looked like Nick Bosa. That's all it was. He played phenomenal. He forced one of the interceptions with, I forget, was it Hufanga who picked it off? I don't remember. But Bosa was out there causing havoc. He's got a sack and a half. He has a strip sack in there. He was just all over the place. He looked like an elite defender that we said, and Brian Baldinger had mentioned, he's not looking like a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt. Well, he did in this game. He looked like Nick Bosa. So that was huge to see. Chase Young got in there with 4 pressures, and I think he had a half a sack too.
Half sack,
just fit right in. This defensive line dominated from the word go, and even the changes that they made in the secondary. Brian, Ambry Thomas, who the hell saw that coming? And he played terrific.
He did
play the best game of his career.
Not maybe. It was 100% the best game of his career.
Should have had the touchdown. I still don't know what the hell happened on that touchdown.
Why the 49ers sideline came? The 49ers sideline came on the field.
Is that why they called it back? I couldn't figure it out. That was very deep into my enjoying my day, by the way. So maybe that's why I couldn't figure it out. But I was like, what the hell is going on? But he looked terrific, and you click Lenore inside, and there were a lot of times where Trevor Lawrence, I'm sorry, I don't want to hear that he's a top whatever quarterback again. I know he's got some offensive line problems, and nobody was going to succeed against this Niners D, but he has not looked like an upper echelon QB this year. Anyway, there were a lot of times that he went back to throw and just froze. His first read froze. And then there was nothing he could do because the rush was on him. So whatever was happening in the back end, the previous 3 weeks where guys were just, getting rid of the ball in 2 seconds and there was this cushion, wasn't there this week. And the defensive line got home 5 sacks, I think it was. So everything you wanted to see, check. Niners defense, if it stays like this, it's going to be a dominant unit again for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I would be interested to see what the numbers are in terms of how much man coverage they played. It felt like they were playing more than they normally do, and it felt like that was, we talked about it in the preview that Trevor Lawrence's QBR against man is so much lower than it is against zone, and it's largely because, again, they are predicated on a really, that offense is very much a. It's an intricate offense. It's not a bruiser. It's not, it's not we're lining up with our guys and we're going to beat you. It's very intricate. It's very, I don't know. I would almost say one-dimensional. They don't really have a run game very much. And, I think Lawrence has really lived on quick passes, largely because of that offensive line. It's pretty bad if we're being perfectly honest. But and zone beaters, RPOs, things like that. And it felt like the 49ers played a lot more man, and it really made a big difference because the Jacksonville Jaguars receivers weren't winning on their routes. And so there really wasn't anywhere for Lawrence to go. And it is a perfect example of pass rush and coverage being married to each other. Right? The coverage was good, which meant the pass rush could get home. And you saw that in the form of 5 sacks on the day, and, 2 interceptions from Lawrence, a fumble from Lawrence. They forced, 4 turnovers total, I believe, and didn't give up any. Obviously that's going to be a recipe for success. I just think this defense looked rested. They looked like some guys that may have been banged up, including Javon Hargrave, who was on the, he was on the injury report all week. He was questionable going into the game. But again, he dominated. But, it looked like this team came out of the bye healthy and was ready to let everybody else know, as I said earlier, hey, we're back. Like, that wasn't us for those 3 weeks. And this is the stretch where they need to play this way because
Mhm.
the schedule isn't easy. They've got Tampa Bay at home this week, and they can't take them lightly, and I don't think that they will. But then it's Seahawks, Eagles, Seahawks, and man, that's a brutal stretch, especially with that first Seahawks game being in Seattle on a short week on Thanksgiving, and then that Eagles game looms large in week 13, and I am very much looking forward to that game, as I already had some Eagles fan just talk shit in my mentions for no apparent reason whatsoever about Trent Williams. So it was the performance that we expect, and I would almost argue maybe even better because of the way that Ambry Thomas played, which is not something that we expected. But with Thomas on the field, that bumped Lenore inside, and it kept Isaiah Oliver off the field, and I think that was a big a big boon for this team. And if Thomas can play like he did on Sunday moving forward, that's humongous. But even if he plays at 80% of what he played
Mhm.
on Sunday, that's still really good, and that's still enough to keep Oliver on the off the field and Lenore in the slot. So all good things on the defensive side of the ball. Really nothing to point at and be like, what's going on there? It
It was
was
everything you'd
absolutely,
want to see.
overwhelming,
And
just
look, they
overwhelming.
got to an NFC Championship game and should have gotten to a Super Bowl with Ambry Thomas playing corner a couple of years ago.
True, true.
It's not like they can't do that with him. Is I'm
Yeah.
not saying he's 1994 Deion Sanders, but he can be serviceable if the pass rush gets there or whatever. So
Hmm.
let's see what happens. It's 1 week, but so far so good.
Yeah.
So the second box, Brian, that I wanted to check was Brock Purdy
Hmm.
because it's easier said than done for a young quarterback. You're seeing it with Zach Wilson. You're seeing it with Mac Jones. It just gets in your head, man. Right? You have a few
Yeah.
bad games. You have a few bad turnovers. Is it going to escalate? Is it going to snowball? Or are you going to come out and just put it behind you? You're going to have a short memory and you're going to come out and just play a great game. And he was 1926,
Yep.
296 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was in complete control of this game from the word go. The only throw that you were like, was his first touchdown pass, which
Yes.
was one of those, no, 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 yes. And when he
Yes.
threw it, I'm like, oh shit, dude, what are you
Yeah.
doing? And then it
What
hits in
are
the
we
perfect
doing?
spot. And you were saying off before we started, you're like, listen, I was going crazy when he threw it. It doesn't mean it was a good decision. And Kyle said the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're right. It was not something Kyle probably wants to see again. That's part of Purdy's game. He's going to
Hmm.
take shots like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's going to backfire, and sometimes you're going to thread the needle to Brandon Ayuk, and he did.
Yep.
The throw to me that was probably my favorite Brock Purdy throw ever was the 66-yard touchdown to
To
George Kittle.
Kittle. Yeah. Yep.
So he pump fakes to Ayuk, and the pocket
Hmm.
just collapses in his face.
Hmm.
And everybody
Hmm.
who wants to knock his arm looked pretty good to me there. Pocket collapsing. He's got one-on-one with Kittle on the outside. Just lays it right in there, 66 yards. And if you watch the replay, you could see Kyle Shanahan like Kittle was maybe on the 25, and Kyle just turns around and just pumps his fist. It's a really cool. I
Yeah. I was like,
retweeted it on my Twitter line from Brian Baldinger. It's a really cool
yeah.
image of Kyle just turning around and just pumping his fist after
It
Kittle
was like
caught the
right
ball.
after Kittle caught it, he was like, he didn't even need to look. He knew that that was a
Yeah, he
touchdown. It was
knew.
awesome.
It was really
Yeah.
cool. So now
Yeah.
Purdy, I told you I just got a bunch of stats I'm going to throw out
Yeah.
because it is crazy. And again, has he had some bad moments? Sure. Does every
Sure.
quarterback have bad moments? Did you just watch Trevor Lawrence play in this last game? Happens. But what he's doing for the majority of the time, it's been some historic stuff, man. So he's the second quarterback in NFL history with 3 games of 3+ touchdown passes and a passer rating of 140 or higher in his first 2 seasons. The only other person to do that is Kurt Warner. And Kurt Warner actually quoted my tweet. Is that what the kids
Yeah.
are
Quote
saying?
tweeted you. Yep.
Which was kind of cool. I'd love to get Kurt on the show, but in the meantime,
Yeah.
I'll take that. That was really cool. And Purdy is averaging about 260 yards a game, maybe 259 right now. I know there's the extra game, right, with 17 games now, but if he
Right.
stays at this pace, he's going to throw for more yards than any 49ers quarterback in franchise history. He'll throw for about 4,400, which will be more than Garcia and Young are the only two who threw for more than 4,000 49ers. He
Yeah.
currently leads the NFL with a QB rating of 109.9. The last 49ers QB to lead the NFL in rating was Steve Young in 1997. He would be the youngest quarterback to lead the league in QB rating. Tua did it last year at 24 years old. Nick Foles did it at 24 years old. Brock is 23 until the end of December. He'd be the youngest QB to do it since Dan Marino was 22 years old in 1984.
The guy,
this is
the
not
reason he's wearing 13, baby.
That's his man. Like this is not flash in the pan type stuff. This is some really crazy things that Brock Purdy is doing week in and week out. He had a PFF rating of 91.7 in this game. Just complete control. And Jacksonville's all over it.
He also leads the league in QBR now too. So it's QB rating and QBR.
Oh, isn't Josh Allen? He might be.
He surpassed Josh Allen. I mean, now granted, Allen needs to is playing tonight.
As we're
so we'll see. But as it stands right now, he is 1 and Josh Allen is 2.
So a couple other things. He was pressured. This is from Chase Sr. Pressured on a career high 50% of his dropbacks, threw for a career high 143 yards when pressured, 8 of 12 with 2 TDs. And on throws of 10 plus yards, 8 of 8, 213 yards, 3 touchdowns with a perfect 158.3 rating. You're seeing a downfield game with this team now that you haven't seen in previous years. Jimmy Garoppolo's not hitting that throw to George Kittle. I'm not picking on Jimmy. He was a quarterback before Purdy was here. He's not hitting the throw. It's a sack. It just is. He's making plays that are there going to be some mistakes that happen? Sure. But what he's given this team, man, if you see a game like that on the road, going across the country after you've played 3 of arguably your worst games of your career, and you come back with that game, if he didn't earn respect for a lot of people, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, we were talking off air. One of the things Purdy said, I don't know if it was after the game or today. I think it was after the game. Somebody asked him essentially about kind of his aggressive nature. And that's the thing is you look at Brock Purdy and you're like, that doesn't look like a guy that would want to be aggressive, just simply because, again, he doesn't have the same physical tools that some of the guys that we really think about in terms of being aggressive at the quarterback position has, like a Patrick Mahomes, like a Josh Allen, right? And they're aggressive because they have the tools to be aggressive. They can fit the ball in tight windows. They've got rocket launchers attached to their shoulder. Brock Purdy doesn't have that, but he has enough. And that's the thing is I think that's the one thing that has always really tempered expectations, if you will, of Brock Purdy. Again, is that, he's a little bit shorter, doesn't have a rocket of an arm, whatever. But I think what we're seeing is that he has enough, and that's all it needs to be. It just needs to be enough. I don't know that there's a throw on the foot, that he can't make in this offense specifically. Right now, again, is he going to be as successful in Kansas City as Patrick Mahomes is? Maybe not. Right. But it doesn't matter because he plays for the 49ers. So whatever. But that's what he said was he appreciates that Kyle and Brian Greasy, his quarterback coach, allow him to be aggressive. What he said is they don't handcuff me. And that's interesting to me because, if you look at some of the scouting reports of Brock Purdy coming out of Iowa State, or you talk to people who watched him play, he was a bit of a chaos agent in Ames, Iowa. He, for all the good that he did, there was some pretty bad as well. And a lot of that came with just trying to be too aggressive. And, we really laud his decision-making. And I still think he largely makes really good decisions on the football field. But he will occasionally make a bad decision in the name of being aggressive. For example, that throw to Ayuk for the first touchdown, right? That was him being aggressive and making a bad decision because he's trying to be aggressive. Now it paid off, but Kyle Shanahan said that was probably the worst decision he's made since becoming quarterback on this team. And Kyle said, it took me a while to get over it. And in my head, I'm like, you aren't over it, Kyle. You're not over it yet. It's going to take you till like Thursday. But, it turned out to be a positive, right? Now, if he throws that and it gets intercepted, now all of a sudden that's a negative, right? And so the chaos with which he plays has largely been good so far, but we have seen it be bad. And that has to do with like even that decision, that interception against Cincinnati, right? Where, he's trying to be aggressive and making a play, not understanding, hey, even if you make this throw, it's being called back because you've already got offensive linemen down the field. This was a busted run play. You should just know you got to dirt that and move on.
Right.
But again, I don't think I don't think that they're trying to squeeze that out of him, if you will, and it's interesting because, Kyle Shanahan is a control freak, and that's largely, I think, why he has liked Brock Purdy. Is Brock Purdy, for the most part, plays within the system and goes to where Kyle Shanahan wants him to go with the ball, but he is aggressive enough to take the doubles instead of the singles, to that play to Kittle, right? That was designed to go to Ayuk on a deep dig, and that's where that pump fake comes in, but that was covered. But Purdy recognized pre-snap, hey, Kittle's going to be one-on-one against a safety, so he pump fakes to Ayuk and then puts it up to Kittle. And the reason that pocket collapsed as quickly as it did is because the drop back that he took, if you look at where Ayuk is, it ties into where that play is supposed to go to Brandon Ayuk. And so that pocket is muddy because he holds on to it longer than that play is designed to be held onto, but he did so because he knew Kittle was going to be one-on-one. Those are the kind of plays, like you said, that quarterbacks in this system in San Francisco haven't made before. And that it just goes to show just the nature of his game. And, one of the things that I thought was interesting is, and you tweeted this out. I was looking for it, and I think I retweeted it earlier. Again, it's just more Brock Purdy praise, but Brock Purdy currently, what is his average completion is, I believe, almost a yard more than the second.
Yeah,
Then number two, it's Tua, right? At like
yeah,
8.5, and he's at 9.5.
Brock is 9.3 yards per attempt,
Yeah.
and Tua is 8.5. And you know what I thought was interesting about that? Matt Ryan was 9.3 in his
Oh, there you go.
MVP season.
Yeah.
So Brock is throwing for, I think it's over 2,300 yards.
I
13
say I
quarterbacks.
found your tweet. So
Okay,
you
yeah.
said 13, 13 quarterbacks have thrown for at least 2,200 yards this season, and the only one who's done that with less than 300 pass attempts is Brock Purdy, who has 250. So he leads the NFL with 9.3 yards per attempt. The next closest is Tua at 8.5. So again, it just goes to show he's playing really efficiently, but it's not at the expense of explosion. And that's where I think he has elevated this offense to where it's at currently, versus, again, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, Nick Mullins, Bobby, I keep calling him Bobby Hoyer, Brian Hoyer, etc.
And the third thing, obviously Purdy's going to be better when he has all his weapons. And I wanted to see, okay, they've had these issues without Trent, without Debo. When you got everybody back, when the Avengers are all there, what are you going to look like? And it was just a masterclass. And you can look at every single one of these guys. Let's look at Trent Williams first.
Mm-hmm.
The best left tackle in the game. He is a Hall of Famer when he's out there. It changes everything. And he was a little rusty in this game, and I still thought he dominated in some parts of it. I think he gave up 4 pressures. He had a hold, but he made a huge difference, especially when he's out there running the same speed as like linebackers and or whatever else, and just mowing people down. Just having Trent out there makes a huge difference. And Debo too. Debo didn't have a crazy statistical game. I think he had, I think it was 7 touches for 59 yards between rushing and
then a touchdown,
receiving, and the big touchdown. He had the 23-yard touchdown run.
Yeah.
So that was a big play. But again, just having him out there, and Purdy even said, they mentioned it on the broadcast, he was like, just when I look at the huddle and I see Debo, I feel better. It makes me more confident. I just to know that he's out there. Ayuk had a very efficient game. He had 3 catches, 55 yards, and the touchdown. George Kittle has been a monster the last 3 games.
Yeah.
George Kittle, 17 catches, 343 yards, and a touchdown his last 3 games. He's quietly on pace for about 1,050, 1,100 yards this year. And you would think early in the season, he had a couple, one catch for 3-yard
Mm-hmm.
games or whatever it was. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, Kittle's not having a big year. Well, all of a sudden he is. The only two tight ends
Yeah.
who have more yards than him are Kelsey and TJ Hawkinson right now. So he's really come on. And then you have McCaffrey just doing McCaffrey things. He's like the only one who didn't score a touchdown this week.
Right.
So his
That
streak,
was
he
that's
ends.
really the only negative on offense,
And
if we're being
I
really
heard some
honest.
people going back and forth. I didn't give a shit that they had him try to score on that drive. I know
I
people were
loved
worried
it.
about getting him hurt
I
and
loved
stuff,
it.
but I loved it too. The team looked like they were really into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a record that, I mean, I don't know, in this day and age, if anybody's even going to tie him anymore in this day and age of football. But if he gets it, that's going to be his record for a really long time. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
blame it at all. There were a few plays I was
Because
like,
he's
Kyle,
tied,
seriously?
right? He's
Yeah, they
tied.
tied. They're tied
Okay.
at 18
So,
in the money more.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was thinking he had one play that was a little, I forget what the hell they were, but a couple times he just kind of ran him into the line. I'm like, dude, Kyle,
Yeah.
everybody knows
Be
he's getting the
more
ball.
creative.
Like,
Yeah.
pull something crazy out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Have somebody throw a pick for him or something and see if you get away with it. But whatever. I had no issue with them doing it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I get if you're going to be like, well, he could have gotten hurt and then it's good. But again, this is
Sure.
history.
But he
Everybody
could
was in
also
on
get
it.
hurt in the first quarter.
Exactly. I had no issue with it whatsoever. So again, you had all the pieces in place. Is it going to look like the way it did earlier in the season? And absolutely. It was just picking up where they left off from Dallas. Because you go to the Dallas game, you go to Cleveland, Debo gets hurt early, and Trent Williams gets hurt early, and they didn't look the same for 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have everybody back, and it looks just the way that it did in Dallas. Now you have to stay healthy, and if one of those guys do go out again, because this team is very star heavy, are they going to be able to play a little bit better? Will other people be able to step up? That remains to be seen. We'll see. But for right now, just cross your fingers. Everybody stays healthy because this is a scary offense when they're all on the field.
Yeah, and then another thing that I thought was interesting to see is John Feliciano played really well at left guard, and I feel like that bodes well moving forward because once Banks gets back, I think that you can now move Feliciano over to right guard and have Burford on the bench as a backup. Although I will give Burford his props. There was that one short yardage play, and I don't even remember. I can't remember if it was the second half or the first half, but McCaffrey gets stoned at the line, and Burford just shoves him forward for the first down.
Yes.
Which was a heads up play.
play.
Which was a heads up play by Burford. So I wanted to give him props on that, but again, this is more about how things have gone all season, and for the most part, Burford's been probably the weakest link on the offensive line. So Feliciano had a great game. I believe that I think he had I believe his PFF
rating was
grade,
high.
Yeah. So his PFF grade was 81.7. That was an 81.2 pass blocking grade and a 76.7 run blocking grade, again, per PFF. So good game from Feliciano.
Mm-hmm.
And and the other thing about Trent Williams is, even Trent said that his ankle was about 70 to 75% in this game. So hopefully, he said he didn't do any further damage to it. So I don't know if he's going to be able to get to 100 if he continues to play. I would venture to say not, but hopefully that doesn't get any worse. And again, you get to have your full team and your full complement of players as you go into this stretch of 3 games against the Seahawks and Eagles in, what is it? It's not even a full 21 days. It's, because one of them is a Thursday. So, just a fun performance on offense. And that's the other thing is they scored 34 points. Brock Purdy had 296 yards. There were only 26 pass attempts in this game, which is, again, just goes to show the explosion that they are operating with in the passing game. And I will say that the running game still really wasn't there, but at the same time, this Jacksonville team was going into the game was ranked 3rd against the run. So it's not like, this is a poor run defense that they were going against. It was a good run defense, and they still put up yards on the ground. And McCaffrey, played better, and Debo had his rushes, but I'll be interested to see kind of if they can continue to get it going, because they're going to need that, especially in the playoffs. The other thing that I'm not going to say questions were answered. Run defense is a question that we had. This Jaguars team is not a good running team, so I don't think we answered that question. And they're more of a finesse running team, and I don't think the 49ers have really had any problem with finesse running teams. It's really the teams that run right at you that they've had trouble with, like the Browns. And there's two of those teams in the NFC that they're going to have to deal with, in the Lions and the Eagles. So that's another thing where it's like, we'll see how things go, especially in week 13. But hard to point to anything that wasn't a positive in this game.
Man, the NFC, actually all the NFL right now. We're gonna have Cynthia Freeland on this week on Wednesday, and I wanted to ask Cynthia about this. Like, there's just such a disparity between like the really good teams, and then there's just so many teams that suck. And there's so many teams that can't score points right now. I don't know, kind of interested why, I guess. I saw something today. I think there's like something like 12 teams that have more field goals than touchdowns or something like that.
Yikes.
Which it's just, there's some of these games are just disgusting this year. I mean, did you try to watch the Sunday night game?
No, I had no interest in that.
You didn't even do that to yourself? No, I can't turn away, but like, just, Zach, I know Aiden O'Connell's a rookie, but Zach Wilson's terrible. You got Tommy DeVito running out there. There's just some really, really bad teams. Mac Jones looks like he's going to be probably a career backup from now on, after throwing maybe the worst pass I've ever seen to lose that game. He had Mike Gesicki open in the end zone, and he threw it like 10 feet too short. Somebody tweeted, what did he say? He's like, when you say that's the worst throw of Mac Jones' career, that's really saying something, or something along those lines. It was pretty funny. But
there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah, it's like, that was it. That was the pinnacle of bad for Mac Jones. So just a lot of shitty play, man. I mean, if you're listening to Bill Simmons today, and they were trying to think of like just 15 QBs, and he's like, I may have to put Baker Mayfield in the top 15.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about it. Holy shit, you might. There's just so many bad quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Josh Dobbs is an awesome story right now, and obviously Stroud.
I think that's part of what you're talking about, right? That scoring is down, and it's just, there's a dearth of good starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And
there's like 10 rookies that have started games.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been some football's been ugly this year, man. It really has. It's been a weird season in the NFL.
And the other thing is, like, you look across at the AFC, and last week you're like, oh God, the Ravens look like they're going to steamroll to the Super Bowl, and then they lose to the Browns. And Deshaun Watson looks like, in the first half, you're like laughing because he looks just like god awful. And then he has 100% completion percentage in the second half against what was supposed to be the best defense in the NFL. So just a lot of weird kind of parity situations. And I don't feel like there's been just one team that you could point to and be like, that is the dominant team in the NFL. Now, there's only one team that is still sporting one loss, and that's the Eagles. But you watch them play, and not that this isn't a recipe to continue to win, but they're winning lots of close games and ugly games and things like that, which is great character building, all of that, for a team. But they don't look dominant. They look beatable. But it's also just kind of the style that they play, right? Their whole goal is to just absolutely suffocate you on offense and take the air out of the ball. And then, on defense, they're just trying to limit, your explosives, and that's kind of their MO. So I'm just so excited for that matchup. And, as fans, we can look ahead. The players won't, but as fans we can. But yeah, there just doesn't feel that there's only one team that really feels like they can point to more than one performance in the season and be like, these were really dominating performances. And it is the 49ers with this win over the Jaguars, and then the win over the Cowboys. And you could even point to a couple of those other victories early on in the season. including over the Steelers, who are 6-3.
6-3 somehow, probably the
And
luckiest
yeah,
6-3 team I've ever seen. Kenny Pickett has
no
6
doubt.
touchdown passes this year, and they have 6 wins. It's incredible.
It's
But
crazy.
there's not the only team that I think. Well, I'm afraid of the Eagles for all the reasons you said,
Yeah,
and I'm afraid of the Chiefs because of Patrick Mahomes. But
sure.
if you look at all the other teams, I love the Lions. I think they're going to win 13 games. They're fun as shit. I hope
Hmm.
if it's not the 49ers, I hope it's them. But you could score on them. If
Yeah.
that ends up being a track meet or whatever, I feel good about the Niners against them, and I feel good about
Hmm.
with the Niners against Goff. They do have a good running
Hmm.
game.
Well, look
Dallas,
what the
we've seen with the
Ravens did
Niners.
to Lions.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Dallas, we've seen the Niners own them. I'm not worried about them, and there's no one else in the NFC that worries me. AFC, the Bills, I don't know what the hell's going on with that team. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. Miami never beats good teams. They destroy bad
Yeah.
ones, but they seem to
Yeah.
always lose against good teams. Again, Mahomes will always scare me, even though he's got shitty receivers. Ravens scare me too. I don't. That was a division loss. It was fluky.
Hmm.
I know Lamar can be up and down in January, but they scare me. Bengals have to get to the playoffs. I mean, they just
Yeah.
kicked the Niners' ass, so it's hard not to say that they can't do the same thing. But in a rematch, with the Niners are right. I feel better about the Niners there too.
Definitely.
Jacksonville's a fraud. Am I missing anybody? I don't think so.
No.
So listen, the Niners
Houston
this year,
Texans, the Houston Texans, who are currently the 7th seed in the AFC, which is
D'Amico
awesome.
Ryans and CJ Stroud,
Yeah.
just an awesome
Let's go,
story.
Miko.
Awesome story. This year, if you get past the Eagles, I feel like the Niners have as good a chance as any of these recent years to
Yeah.
upend the AFC. I just feel like it's not as strong as it has been, even though they have the great quarterbacks there or whatever else.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't feel like it. So listen, man, we've been talking about this season. You got to get through Philly, but this is the year. This is the year to get it done. And this week was a good start in the second half to move towards that. So
One thing I thought was interesting, and we can end on this because it's just an interesting thought experiment. But Jason Hurley, who tweets about the 49ers and their salary cap on Twitter, and I found out today because I was just looking at his website. He's a fellow New Yorker, Al, so you can appreciate
oh,
that.
okay.
But he actually tweeted out um, a I'm going to say a realistic, right? Contract extension for Chase Young to keep him in San Francisco. And I thought that was an interesting, kind of an interesting thought experiment, or just at the very least, an interesting thought. I think they traded for Chase Young and everyone's like, this is just a 1-year rental.
Yeah.
But you look at it and he's 24 years old, still young. And I don't, the contract that he tweeted out was essentially a contract that was 5 years, $110 million, but far less guarantees than what Nick Bosa had. And the way that he was able to structure it, kept his salary cap hit low in 2024 and 2025. And then, it started to escalate after that. But part of what he talked about as well is, by 2030, in that contract, it was, they were going to owe him something like $30 million that season or whatever. But the way things are trending now, he also said that the salary cap will likely be over $300 million a year by that time. And also the 49ers are only committed at that point to Nick Bosa that far in the future as well. So I think if Chase Young plays well, I think the 49ers may look to extend him. And the thought that I kept thinking was, they keep looking for somebody to play opposite Nick Bosa. And they drafted Drake Jackson in the second round last year, and that looks like it might not be, or he might not be who they thought they were getting. Although he's also still very young. He was 21 when he was drafted, so there's still time for him. But if you can structure it in a way that allows you to keep him and also still do other things that you want to do, like extend Brandon Ayuk, I think that's a smart move. The Hargrave deal is essentially a 2-year deal. They can get out of it
Yeah.
after 2 years. So, you look at some of it and I think some people freak out like, well, why, how are we going to be able to extend him? And, maybe his agent's like, no, like we want a 1-year prove it deal somewhere so that,
Mhm.
if we have a huge season, we can get something in the arena of Nick Bosa or whatever. But if you're Chase Young and you have the kind of relationship you have with Nick Bosa, and you already feel like you're in love with the locker room and the culture in San Francisco, and you can lock in playing with, one of your best friends in the world and mentor in Nick Bosa, and still reap, bring in $110 million over 5 years. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. So it'll be interesting to see how things go. And a lot of it is, you can't guarantee him a lot just because of injury and things like that. But man, he looked really good out there. He looked really good. That defensive line looked incredible with him out there. And if this turns into more than just a half season rental for a 3rd round comp pick, and you can extend him at a reasonable contract and keep him here, to pair with Nick Bosa for the next 3 to 5 years, man, again, just absolute GM dominance right there.
It's a good problem to have. All right, we're out of here. Thanks, everybody.
Later.